It was a Thursday night at Precision Insurance when my life shattered into 1,000 pieces. I'd stayed late to finish some paperwork on a complicated fraud case. Ironic, considering what was about to unfold. As the company's lead investigator, I prided myself on spotting liars. That night proved I had a massive blind spot. The office gym was practically empty at 9 p.m., just the way I liked it. After an hour of weights and a punishing session on the treadmill, I headed to the locker room, muscles burning with that good kind of pain. I was about to round the corner when I heard the unmistakable voice of Dave Simmons, our risk assessment manager. "Poor Jack," he said, followed by a chuckle that made my blood freeze. "Guy's the best investigator in the company, and he has no clue his wife's been screwing Lucas for months." I stopped dead, my gym bag slipping from my suddenly numb fingers. The thud it made hitting the tile floor wasn't loud, but it was enough to make the voices inside go quiet. "Who's there?" asked another voice. "Mike from accounting." I could have walked away. I could have pretended I hadn't heard. Instead, I stepped around the corner, my face a careful mask. "Just me," I said casually, nodding at them both. "Forgot my watch." The look on their faces told me everything. Dave's eyes widened with horror, and Mike became intensely interested in tying his shoes. The silence stretched between us, heavy and uncomfortable. "Jack, man, Dave started. I held up a hand. "Save it." I walked to my locker, opened it with steady hands, and retrieved my watch. I slipped it on, closed the locker, and turned to face them. "So," I said, my voice remarkably calm considering the hurricane inside me. "My wife and Lucas Rivers?" They exchanged glances, trapped. Mike nodded reluctantly. "How long?" "About 6 months from what we've heard," Dave admitted, unable to meet my eyes. "Look, Jack, most of us thought you knew and were just dealing with it privately. 6 months, half a year of lies, half a year of coming home to Clara, kissing her, sleeping beside her, all while she was secretly meeting that smug bastard from the legal department. Who else knows?" I asked, my voice dropping lower. "Everyone," Mike confessed. "They're not exactly discreet at company events." The realization hit me like a freight train, all those sympathetic glances in meetings. The conversations that stopped when I entered the break room. The knowing smirks from Lucas whenever we passed in the hallway. My colleagues hadn't just known, they'd been watching the whole humiliating spectacle unfold like some sick reality show. "Anything else I should know?" I asked, surprised by how steady my voice remained. Dave shifted uncomfortably. "They were at the Millbrook Hotel last Friday when you were in Dallas for that deposition. Lucas was bragging about it in the men's room to anyone who'd listen." The Millbrook, the same hotel where Clara and I had spent our 5th anniversary. "He said," Dave hesitated, looking at Mike for support. "What did he say?" I insisted, my voice deadly quiet. Mike sighed. "He said she was insatiable, that she complained you were always too tired or too busy, that she needed a real man who could satisfy her." Each word felt like a knife twisting in my gut, but I maintained my composure. 15 years of marriage reduced to locker room gossip. The mother of my children portrayed as some desperate, sex-starved housewife. I nodded once, absorbing the information like I would facts from a case file. "Thanks for the intel, gentlemen." As I turned to leave, Dave called after me. "Jack, what are you going to do?" I looked back at him, my expression neutral. "What I do best," I replied, "investigate." The drive home was a blur. My knuckles were white on the steering wheel as I navigated the Houston streets on autopilot. Questions bombarded me from every angle. How had I missed this? Was our entire marriage a lie? What about our children, Jack Jr. and Amanda? Did everyone in our social circle know? Had Clara and Lucas laughed about me together? A memory surfaced, the company Christmas party 3 months ago. Clara had worn a red dress that hugged her curves, drawing appreciative glances from several men. I'd been proud, flattered even. Now I wondered, had she worn it for Lucas? I remembered how she disappeared for nearly 20 minutes. At the time, I'd assumed she was in the ladies' room. Now bile rose in my throat as other possibilities emerged. By the time I pulled into our driveway in the quiet suburban neighborhood we'd called home for the past decade, I'd made a decision. I wouldn't confront Clara immediately. That's what she'd expect. An emotional outburst, accusations, maybe even tears. That would give her the upper hand. No, I needed to be strategic. I needed evidence. I needed time. I cut the engine and sat for a moment, staring at our two-story colonial. Warm light spilled from the windows. Through the living room window, I could see Clara moving around, probably tidying up before bed as she always did. The woman I'd loved for 15 years, the mother of my children. A stranger. I took a deep breath, slipped my wedding ring into my pocket, and stepped out of the car. Daddy! Amanda, my 7-year-old princess, launched herself at me the moment I opened the door. I caught her and spun her around, forcing a smile. Hey, pumpkin, aren't you supposed to be in bed? I wanted to show you my science project, she exclaimed, wriggling out of my arms and tugging me toward the dining room table where a half-constructed solar system hung from a coat hanger. It's amazing. You said he's genuinely impressed despite everything. Saturn's rings look perfect. Mom helped me with the glitter, she admitted. As if summoned, Clara appeared in the doorway, wearing yoga pants and one of my old college t-shirts. Her dark hair was pulled back in a messy bun, and she wore the faintest trace of makeup, looking every bit the devoted wife and mother. There you are, she said, smiling. I was beginning to think you'd moved into the office. She crossed the room and stood on tiptoe to kiss me. It took everything I had not to flinch away from her touch. Her lips felt different now, contaminated. Just finishing up the Donovan case, I replied, stepping back. Where's Junior? Upstairs playing that video game you got him. I told him 15 more minutes, then lights out. She tilted her head, studying me. You look tired. Long day, I managed. I'm going to grab a shower. Upstairs, I stopped by Jack Jr.'s room. My 10-year-old son was exactly where Clara had said, hunched over his gaming console, thumbs flying as he navigated some digital battlefield. He looked up as I entered, his face, so much like mine, lighting up. Dad, I beat level 12. Want to see? I sat beside him on the bed, listening as he enthusiastically explained the game's strategy. Looking at him, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. I wouldn't just be fighting for my pride. I'd be fighting for my kids. They deserved better than a mother who could so casually betray their family. After putting both kids to bed, I retreated to the shower, standing under scalding water as if it could wash away what I'd learned. Part of me wanted to confront Clara immediately, to see her face when I told her I knew. But the investigator in me, the part that had built a career on methodical, thorough pursuit of the truth, knew better. I needed irrefutable evidence. I needed leverage. I needed a plan. Clara was already in bed when I emerged from the bathroom reading a novel. She looked up and smiled. Want to watch something? She asked, patting at my side of the bed. That show you like has a new episode. Not tonight, I said, slipping under the covers and turning away from her. Like I said, long day. Poor baby, she murmured, placing a hand on my shoulder. Want a back rub? I'm good, I replied, shrugging off her touch. Just need sleep. I felt her hesitation, sensed her confusion at my uncharacteristic coolness. After a moment, she returned to her book. By the way, she said casually, I was thinking we could take the kids to that new water park on Saturday. Juniors have been begging to try the big slides. Family day, as if we were still a real family and not a sham. Sure, I replied. Sounds good. As I lay in the dark, listening to Clara's breathing deepen into sleep beside me, I began to formulate my plan. The betrayal had blindsided me, but the response wouldn't be impulsive. It would be calculated, thorough, devastating. By the time I was done, Clara and Lucas wouldn't know what hit them. Sleep eluded me that night, but clarity didn't. By morning, I knew exactly what I needed to do. The next few weeks were a masterclass in deception, which was ironic considering I was the one being deceived. I became the perfect husband, attentive, loving, completely unsuspecting. I brought Clara flowers just because. I suggested date nights. I made love to her, mechanical, disconnected sex that left me feeling hollow, and pretended everything was normal, all while I gathered evidence. The first piece of my surveillance operation fell into place 3 days after I'd overheard Dave and Mike. I'd taken a detour during lunch to visit an electronics store across town, paying cash for a high-end GPS tracker. That evening, while Clara bathed the kids, I slipped out to the garage and attached it to the undercarriage of her SUV. Next came the phone. Clara was careless with her devices, often leaving her cell on the counter or coffee table. It took less than 5 minutes to install tracking software that would forward all her texts and call logs to a burner phone I'd purchased. The security PIN, our anniversary date. The irony wasn't lost on me. The hidden microphones were trickier. I placed one in her car, one in her purse, and one in our bedroom. The last one felt like crossing a line, but I needed to know the extent of her betrayal. Had she talked about me to him? Had she brought him into our home, our bed? I created a dummy email account and registered for a cloud service to store all the data securely. Each night after Clara fell asleep, I'd slip down to my home office and review the day's intelligence. It was like working a case, except the subject was my life and the criminal was my wife. A pattern emerged quickly. Clara would drop the kids at school, then head to her job at the real estate office where she worked as an agent. Tuesdays and Thursdays, she'd take extended lunch breaks, often ending up at a small Italian restaurant downtown, always with Lucas. Their conversations were mundane at first, mostly office gossip and inside jokes, but I kept listening. I needed more than lunch dates to prove an affair. Then, on the 5th day of surveillance, I hit pay dirt, a recorded conversation from Clara's car. "I miss you," Lucas's voice smug and entitled. "Last night wasn't enough." "I know," Clara replied, her voice soft, intimate, a tone I thought had been reserved for me. "But Jack's been acting strange lately. More attentive, almost suspicious." "You're being paranoid," Lucas dismissed. "The man's clueless. He's too wrapped up in his precious investigations to notice what's happening under his own roof." Their laughter felt like acid in my veins. They weren't just betraying me, they were mocking me. "We need to be careful anyway," Clara insisted. "Maybe we should cool it for a while." "Are you kidding?" Lucas sounded genuinely surprised. "After what we did in the shower yesterday?" "Baby, we're just getting started. The shower, my shower, our shower." The image of them together in our home, in the space I considered private and sacred, sent a wave of nausea through me so intense I had to lean over the trash can. The waiting was excruciating. Each day I went to the office, making small talk with colleagues who I now realized had been laughing behind my back for months. I'd pass Lucas in the hallway, this man who was sleeping with my wife, and nod politely. Sometimes we'd even discuss cases together, the legal department and investigations often working in tandem. Lucas Rivers, mid-30s, divorced, known office Casanova. He had the kind of practiced charm that impressed people on first meeting and wore custom suits that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage payment. During meetings, I'd study him covertly, trying to see what Clara saw in him. Was it his confidence, his status, the thrill of the forbidden? What made it worse was that he was good at his job, respected even. His legal opinions were usually sound, his work thorough. He donated to the right charities, played golf with the executives, remembered everyone's birthdays. The perfect corporate citizen, except for the part where he was sleeping with a colleague's wife. 2 weeks into my investigation, I hit another significant piece of evidence. A text from Lucas to Clara. "Miss you. Can't wait for Dallas next weekend. No interruptions this time." Dallas, where I was scheduled to attend a 3-day insurance fraud conference. I forwarded the text to my burner phone and leaned back in my chair, a cold satisfaction settling in my gut. They were getting bolder. Careless. Perfect. The next day I approached Tom Wilson after a budget meeting. Tom was Lucas's office mate, a nervous man with thinning hair who always seemed slightly uncomfortable in his own skin. More importantly, he was a known gossip who couldn't keep a secret to save his life. "Hey, Tom," I said casually as we walked toward the parking lot. "I need to check on a property near Westview for a case. Want to ride along? Could use your input on the liability questions." Sure," he agreed, clearly surprised by the invitation. "Now? If you've got time." 20 minutes later, we were driving through the suburbs, making small talk about the Astros' chances this season. I waited until we were well away from the office before steering the conversation where I wanted it. "So," I said, keeping my tone light, Office party next month. You bringing anyone? Probably not, Tom replied, shifting in his seat. You know how those things go. Everyone gets drunk and does something they regret. Like last year's Christmas party, I prodded. I heard things got pretty wild after Clara and I left early. Tom's face flushed. Yeah, I guess so. Lucas seemed to enjoy himself, I continued, watching Tom's reaction from the corner of my eye. He and Clara were dancing pretty close before we headed out. Right, Tom muttered, suddenly fascinated by the passing scenery. You know, I said, slowing for a red light, it's funny. Clara's been working late a lot recently. Says she's showing houses, but when I call the office, she's never there. Tom's discomfort was palpable now. He tugged at his collar, avoiding my gaze. Maybe she's out with clients, he suggested weakly. Maybe, I agreed, accelerating as the light turned green. Or maybe she's seeing someone. Tom's head snapped toward me, eyes wide. What? Why would you think that? I shrugged, the picture of casual unconcern. Just a feeling. Husband's intuition, you could call it. Jack, I don't think... It's Lucas, isn't it? I interrupted, my voice still eerily calm. They're sleeping together. The silence in the car was absolute. Tom's breathing had quickened, and a sheen of sweat had appeared on his forehead. I kept my eyes on the road, waiting. How did you... he finally began, then stopped. I know everything, I lied smoothly. I just want confirmation. Tom hesitated, clearly weighing his loyalties. Lucas is my boss, he said finally. I can't. Tom, I cut in. We've worked together for 8 years. You know me. Do I seem like the kind of man who'd make a scene? Who'd confront them publicly? I just need to know what I'm dealing with here. Another long pause, then, the Sunset Motel on Highway 59, he said, the words tumbling out in a rush. That's where they meet. Lucas keeps the room key in his desk drawer. Room 118. He swallowed hard. I'm sorry, Jack. I thought you knew. Everyone thought you knew. I nodded, absorbing this final piece of the puzzle. Thank you for your honesty. What are you going to do? Tom asked, echoing Dave's question from the locker room. I smiled slightly. Nothing drastic, just gathering facts for now. Tom looked unconvinced. Lucas has friends in upper management, he warned. He plays golf with the CFO. Noted, I replied, turning the car around. Now tell me about that liability question for the Westview property. Tom blinked, momentarily confused by the abrupt change of subject, but then eagerly followed my lead. We spent the drive back discussing the case as if the previous conversation had never happened. As I dropped him off at the office, Tom hesitated before getting out of the car. Jack, he said quietly, for what it's worth, I think it's disgusting. What they're doing, I mean. Clara's, well, she's making a mistake. A big one. I nodded once. Thanks, Tom. See you tomorrow. With the location confirmed, my next step was clear. I needed visual evidence, not just for myself, but for what would come after. The following day, I borrowed surveillance equipment from the company inventory, a high-definition camera with excellent night vision capabilities, normally used for staking out suspected insurance fraudsters. No one questioned me. Equipment sign-outs were routine in my position. That weekend, I told Clara I was leaving for the Dallas conference a day early. To get settled in, I explained over breakfast, watching her reaction carefully. Oh, she said, and I caught the flicker of calculation in her eyes. I thought you weren't leaving until Friday morning. Change of plans, I replied, sipping my coffee. The opening keynote was moved up. I'll need to be there Thursday night. I see, she said, and I could practically see the text she'd be sending Lucas the moment I was out the door. Will you call when you arrive? The kids will want to say goodnight. Of course, I promised. I'd never forget that. I kissed her goodbye, embraced my children, and loaded my suitcase into the car. Then I drove exactly 6 blocks away, parked in a grocery store lot, and waited. 20 minutes later, Clara's SUV passed by, headed in the direction of her office. I gave her another 10 minutes, then circled back to our neighborhood, parking a few houses down with a clear view of our driveway. The wait was excruciating. Hours passed. I answered work emails on my phone, made a few calls to maintain the illusion I was on the road to Dallas. Around noon, movement caught my eye. Clara's SUV pulled into the driveway. She emerged looking flushed, hurried. She entered the house and emerged 15 minutes later with an overnight bag. My heart pounded as I watched her toss the bag into her car and check her appearance in the rearview mirror. She applied fresh lipstick, fluffed her hair, and adjusted her blouse to show more cleavage. The calculated nature of it, the premeditation, made my stomach turn. This wasn't a moment of weakness or a one-time mistake. This was a woman preparing for a planned rendezvous, a woman who had been living a double life for months. I followed at a safe distance as she drove to the Sunset Motel. The place was exactly what you'd expect, a single-story sprawl of rooms with peeling paint and flickering neon. Clara parked near room 118, glanced around nervously, and hurried inside with her bag. I circled the lot, finding a discreet spot with a clear view of the room's door. Less than 10 minutes later, a sleek black Audi pulled in, Lucas's car. He practically swaggered to the door, not bothering with the furtive glances Clara had employed, as if he had nothing to hide, as if he had every right. Once he disappeared inside, I grabbed the surveillance camera and made my way to the back of the motel. Most of these older places had windows that faced out to a service area. Sure enough, room 118's bathroom window was partially open, the cheap blinds not quite reaching the sill. I set up the camera on a tripod behind a dumpster, adjusting the zoom and angle until I had a partial view into the room. Not enough to be voyeuristic, but enough to confirm what I already knew. I started the recording, locked the equipment in place, and returned to my car. The waiting was the hardest part, sitting there knowing what was happening just yards away. My mind filled in the blanks, torturing me with images I'd never be able to unsee. I tried to distract myself with work emails, but my concentration kept slipping. After what felt like an eternity, but was probably only 2 hours, the motel room door opened. Lucas emerged first, straightening his tie, the very picture of a man without a care in the world. He got into his Audi and drove away without a backward glance. Clara appeared 10 minutes later, looking disheveled despite her obvious attempts to tidy herself up. She walked to her car with the slightly uneven gait of a woman who'd been thoroughly bedded, and the sight of it sent a surge of rage through me, so powerful I had to grip the steering wheel to stay in place. Once she was gone, I retrieved the camera. I didn't watch the footage immediately. Some pieces of your life you can't unsee, and I wasn't ready for that particular wound yet. Instead, I drove to a hotel on the other side of town and checked in under the company account, maintaining my Dallas alibi. That night, I called home as promised. Clara answered on the first ring, her voice warm and maternal. "The kids were just asking about you," she said. "How was the drive?" "Fine," I replied. "Traffic was light." "How's everyone there?" "Good. Amanda has a play date tomorrow with Zoe from down the street, and Junior has baseball practice. Oh, and I might show a house in the evening, so Mrs. Peterson will watch them for a few hours." More lies. So effortless. So practiced. "Sounds good," I said. "Put the kids on, would you?" I spoke with Junior about his baseball game and listened to Amanda describe her day at school in enthusiastic detail. When Clara came back on the line, I kept the conversation brief. "I should get some sleep," I told her. "Early start tomorrow." "Of course," she replied. "Love you." The words hit me like a physical blow. How many times had she said those exact words to me, only to whisper them to someone else hours later? "You too," I managed and hung up. Alone in the anonymous hotel room, I finally connected the camera to my laptop. The footage was grainy but clear enough. Clara and Lucas entering the room, embracing, moving to the bed. I fast-forwarded through most of it, unable to stomach the details, but I watched enough to confirm what I needed. There they were, in living color, my wife and her lover. The evidence I'd been gathering for weeks, the final nail in the coffin of my marriage. I saved the file to an encrypted drive, then closed my laptop and lay back on the hotel bed, staring at the ceiling. The strange thing was, I felt nothing, not rage, not despair, not even hatred. Just a cold, clear purpose. The kind of clarity that comes when you've faced your worst fear and survived it. I slept surprisingly well that night. The hard part was over. Now came the reckoning. I returned home Sunday evening as scheduled, playing the role of the oblivious husband to perfection. Clara was solicitous, asking about the conference, listening attentively to my fabricated accounts of panels and networking events. If she noticed anything off about my behavior, she gave no indication. "The kids missed you," she said as we prepared for bed that night. "Especially Amanda. She made you a welcome home card, but she fell asleep before you got back." "I'll thank her in the morning," I replied, going through the motions of our normal routine. Clara slipped into a silky nightgown, one I hadn't seen before, and approached me with that look in her eyes. The one that used to make my heart race, now it just made my skin crawl. "I missed you too," she murmured, running her hands up my chest. "The bed feels empty without you." I briefly wondered if she'd worn that nightgown for Lucas, if she'd said those same words to him. The thought made my stomach clench, but I managed to smile. "I'm pretty beat," I said, gently disentangling myself. "Rain check?" A flicker of annoyance crossed her face. "You've been beat a lot lately," she observed. "Is everything okay?" "Just work stress," I assured her. "This Donovan case is complicated, and I'm worried about the quarterly review coming up." She nodded, accepting the lie easily, just as I had accepted hers for months. "Well, get some rest. I want my energetic husband back." The irony of her complaining about my lack of energy after spending the weekend with her lover wasn't lost on me. But I just nodded and turned away, counting the hours until Monday morning, when my plan would finally come together. Monday morning, I arrived at the office early and requested a meeting with Richard Sloan, the company's executive vice president and my direct supervisor. Richard was old school, a former Marine with a zero-tolerance policy for dishonesty and a fierce loyalty to those he considered his people. More importantly, he was one of the few people at Precision Insurance who wasn't in Lucas's social circle. "Jack," he greeted me, rising from behind his imposing desk. "What can I do for you?" "I need to discuss a sensitive matter," I replied, closing his office door behind me. "It concerns Lucas Rivers and a personal situation." Richard's expression shifted subtly. "I see," he said, gesturing to the chair across from him. "Have a seat." For the next 30 minutes, I laid out my case methodically, professionally. I explained what I'd discovered about Clara and Lucas's affair. I presented the evidence I'd gathered, text messages, GPS data showing their meetings, the video footage from the motel. Throughout my presentation, Richard listened without interruption, his face impassive. "That's a hell of a situation," he said when I'd finished. "I'm sorry you're going through this, Jack." "Thank you, sir," I replied. "But there's more." This was the gamble, the piece I wasn't entirely sure about, but strongly suspected based on comments Lucas had made in meetings, inconsistencies I'd noticed in case files he'd handled. "I believe Lucas may be involved in something irregular with the Westside development claims." Richard's eyebrows shot up. "That's a serious accusation." "I know," I acknowledged. "And under normal circumstances, I wouldn't mix personal and professional matters. But while investigating my personal situation, I noticed patterns that concern me." I pulled out a second file, this one containing financial records, email exchanges, and settlement amounts for cases Lucas had handled over the past year. Nothing definitive, but enough discrepancies to raise red flags. "These 5 claims," I explained, pointing to a spreadsheet, "all involved properties in the Westside development. All were handled by Lucas, all settled for amounts significantly higher than our standard matrix would indicate, and all were paid to shell companies that trace back to Hudson Holdings." Richard frowned, studying the documents. "And Hudson Holdings is owned by Brandon Hudson, who happens to be a regular in Lucas's golf foursome, the same Brandon Hudson who's developing the Westgate Commons project, which Lucas has been pushing our investment division to fund." Richard leaned back in his chair, his expression thunderous. "So you're suggesting Lucas has been inflating settlements to funnel company money to his friend Hudson, potentially in exchange for kickbacks or investment opportunities?" "I'm suggesting it warrants investigation," I corrected carefully. "The patterns are concerning, but I don't have concrete proof of wrongdoing. Yet." Richard stared at me for a long moment, then pressed his intercom button. "Janet, cancel my 10 o'clock, he instructed his assistant, And ask Lucas Rivers, Tom Wilson, and he looked at me questioningly. Clara Harper, I supplied. She's at Premier Realty. And Clara Harper from Premier Realty to come to my office immediately. Tell them it's urgent. I hadn't expected things to move this quickly. Sir, Richard's expression was grim. I've had concerns about some of Lucas's dealings for months. Nothing I could put my finger on, just intuition. If what you're showing me pans out, this could be serious. As for the personal matter, he shook his head. Company policy is clear about relationships between employees. Lucas should have disclosed any involvement with your wife, especially given his position in legal and your role in investigations. The potential conflicts of interest alone. He trailed off as his phone buzzed. Yes, Janet. Good. Send them in when they all arrive. The next 20 minutes passed in tense silence as we waited. I used the time to center myself, to prepare for coming face-to-face with Clara and Lucas in this context. When they finally filed into Richard's office, the confusion on their faces was evident. Clara spotted me first, her expression shifting from puzzlement to alarm. Jack, what's going on? Lucas entered next, followed by a visibly nervous Tom. The door closed behind them with a soft click that somehow sounded final. Thank you for coming, Richard began, his tone formal. Please take a seat. There weren't enough chairs for everyone. Clara and Lucas sat, while Tom remained standing awkwardly by the door. I stayed in my original position to Richard's right. Mr. Rivers, Richard continued, are you familiar with our company's policy regarding disclosure of personal relationships between employees or affiliated parties? Lucas blinked, clearly thrown by the question. Of course, he replied smoothly. Section 7 of the Employee Handbook. All relationships that could potentially create conflicts of interest must be disclosed to HR. Correct, Richard nodded. And have you made any such disclosures recently? Lucas's eyes darted briefly to Clara, then back to Richard. No, sir. I haven't had any relationships requiring disclosure. I see. Richard turned to Clara. Mrs. Harper, you're not an employee of Precision Insurance, but you are married to one of our senior investigators. Are you currently involved in a relationship with Mr. Rivers? The color drained from Clara's face. She looked at me, her eyes pleading. I met her gaze steadily, revealing nothing. That's a personal matter, she stammered. I don't see how it's relevant to... It's relevant, Richard cut in, because your husband has brought to my attention evidence suggesting not only an inappropriate relationship, but potentially serious ethical violations related to company business. Lucas sat up straighter, his charm vanishing into something harder, more calculating. What kind of evidence? He demanded. In answer, Richard turned his computer monitor around, showing a still image from the motel footage. The room went silent. Clara's hand flew to her mouth. Lucas's face darkened. You've been spying on us? He sputtered, glaring at me. I've been investigating, I corrected calmly. It's what I do. This is harassment, Lucas insisted, looking to Richard. He can't just... Mr. Rivers, Richard interrupted, the nature of your personal relationship is, frankly, the least of my concerns at the moment. He pushed forward the file containing the financial discrepancies. I'm more interested in your explanation for these settlement patterns. Lucas stared at the file, his expression shuddering. I don't know what you're implying. I'm not implying anything yet, Richard replied. I'm asking for an explanation. As Lucas fumbled through increasingly weak justifications for the suspicious settlements, I watched Clara. She sat rigid in her chair, hands clasped tightly in her lap, eyes fixed on a point on the wall. She looked small, diminished. Tom, still by the door, had gone pale. Mr. Sloan, he interjected suddenly, I think I should mention that I've been aware of some irregularities in the West Side claims. Lucas's head whipped around. Shut up, Tom. But Tom, perhaps sensing which way the wind was blowing, continued. Lucas asked me to alter some of the damage assessments on those properties. He said it was to expedite the claims, but the numbers never matched the original reports. You lying little, Lucas began, half rising from his seat. That's enough, Richard snapped. Mr. Wilson, I'll need a full statement from you. Miss Jankowski from HR will assist you with that. Mr. Rivers, consider yourself suspended pending a full investigation. Security will escort you to clear out your desk. Lucas stood, his face contorted with fury. This is a setup, he hissed, pointing at me. He's just doing this because he can't keep his wife satisfied. I didn't respond, didn't need to. The evidence spoke for itself. Richard pressed his intercom again. Janet, please send up security and contact HR. As Lucas was escorted out, still protesting, Clara remained seated, looking shell-shocked. Richard glanced between us awkwardly. Mrs. Harper, he said finally, as this is primarily a company matter regarding Mr. Rivers, you're free to go. However, given your connection to the situation, we may need to speak with you again as the investigation progresses. Clara nodded mutely, rising on unsteady legs. She paused at the door, looking back at me. Jack, we'll talk at home, I said quietly. After she left, Richard turned to me with a heavy sigh. That was difficult to watch. Are you all right? I'm fine, I assured him. It needed to be done. Take the rest of the day, he suggested. Hell, take the week if you need it. This is going to get messy and you've been through enough already. Thank you, sir, but I'd rather stay busy. There's the Donovan case to wrap up and… Jack, Richard interrupted firmly. Go home. Deal with your personal situation. That's an order. I nodded reluctantly. Yes, sir. As I gathered my things from my office, I could feel the stares of my colleagues, could hear the whispers already spreading through the building. The story would be all over the company by lunchtime. But strangely, I didn't care. Let them talk. Let them know what had happened. At least now they'd be talking about how I'd exposed the truth, not how I'd been too blind to see it. I drove home slowly, in no hurry to face what awaited me there. When I arrived, Clara's car was already in the driveway. I sat in my car for several minutes, gathering my thoughts, preparing for the final act of this painful drama. Inside, I found her sitting at the kitchen table, her makeup streaked with tears, a half-empty glass of wine in front of her. She looked up as I entered, her eyes red-rimmed and pleading. How long have you known? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Long enough, I replied, remaining standing. About 3 weeks. And you've been, what? Spying on me? Following me? Recording me? Her tone held a note of accusation, as if somehow I was the one who'd done something wrong. I've been gathering evidence, I corrected, making sure I had the full picture before acting. You humiliated me in front of your boss, she said, a flash of anger breaking through her tears. You could have confronted me privately. Like you privately humiliated me in front of my entire office for months, I countered, my voice still unnervingly calm. Everyone knew, Clara. Everyone except me, she flinched. It wasn't like that. Then what was it like? I asked. Explain it to me. Help me understand how my wife of 15 years ended up in a cheap motel with another man. I made a mistake, she said, reaching for my hand across the table. I stepped back, avoiding her touch. Jack, please. We can work through this, for the kids, if nothing else. The kids, I echoed. Yes, let's talk about them. What were you planning to tell them when you eventually left me for Lucas? Or was he just a fling? One of many. It wasn't like that, she repeated. Lucas, he made me feel special, desired. It had been so long since you looked at me that way. I almost laughed at the predictability of it, the classic excuse. It wasn't her fault. It was mine for not making her feel special enough. I've been working 60-hour weeks to provide for this family, I said quietly, to give you and the kids the life you wanted. The house, the cars, the private schools. And while I was doing that, you were sleeping with a man who, by the way, is now being investigated for fraud. Good judgment there, Clara. Really top-notch. She winced. Is that true? About the fraud? Yes, I confirmed. Lucas has been running a scheme with property settlements, funneling company money to a developer friend of his. He'll probably face criminal charges when the investigation is complete. Clara paled. I didn't know. There's a lot you didn't know about your boyfriend, I said, just like there's a lot I didn't know about my wife. She started crying again, softer now. What happens now? I'd been asking myself the same question for weeks. In the beginning, anger had clouded my judgment. I'd fantasized about dramatic confrontations, public humiliations, scorched earth divorces. But as the evidence mounted and the reality of Clara's betrayal sank in, those fiery emotions had cooled into something harder, more resolute. Now, I said calmly, you pack your thing and leave. Her head snapped up. What? You heard me. This house, this marriage, it's over. I want you gone by the time the kids get home from school. You can't just throw me out, she protested. This is my home too. The kids will stay with me, I finished firmly. You can see them on weekends, supervise visits until I'm confident you won't try to turn them against me or expose them to your lifestyle choices. That's not fair, she whispered. I'm their mother. And I'm their father, I replied, a father who hasn't betrayed his family, a father who puts his children first. Unlike their mother, who was too busy having afternoon trysts to pick them up from school on time. Clara flinched as if I'd struck her. You're punishing me. No, I corrected her. I'm protecting my children and myself from someone who's proven she can't be trusted. The lawyers can sort out the details, but you're not staying in this house another night. Where am I supposed to go? She asked, a note of panic creeping into her voice. That's not my problem anymore, I said, turning toward the stairs. I'm going to pack your essential things. You can arrange to get the rest later with supervision. Jack, please, she begged, following me. 15 years, 2 children. You can't just throw that away. I stopped on the stairs, looking down at her. I didn't, I said quietly. You did. The moment you decided our vows, our family, our life together meant so little that you could risk it all for Lucas Rivers. It wasn't like that, she insisted, tears flowing freely now. I was lonely. You were always working, always distracted. I needed someone who saw me, who valued me. And now you've lost everything, I replied without sympathy. I hope it was worth it. I continued upstairs, pulled 2 suitcases from the closet, and began methodically packing Clara's clothes. She hovered in the doorway, alternating between tears, pleas, and occasional flashes of anger. What about everything I've done for this family? She demanded at one point. I gave up my career to raise your children. I supported you through law school. I moved 3 times for your job. Doesn't that count for anything? It counted for everything, I replied, folding one of her sweaters, until you decided to throw it all away for some cheap thrills with a man who was using you. He wasn't using me, she protested. He cared about me. He listened to me. He used you to get his rocks off while his friend embezzled company funds, I corrected brutally. And now he's thrown you under the bus to save his own skin. Did you notice how quickly he distanced himself from you in Richard's office? How he didn't even look at you as he was escorted out? That's your knight in shining armor, Clara. That's the man you destroyed your family for. She had no answer to that, just more tears. When I'd finished, I carried the suitcases downstairs and placed them by the front door. Clara followed, still trying to change my mind. What about couples therapy? She suggested desperately. People recover from affairs all the time. We could... No, I cut her off. This isn't just about the affair, Clara. It's about respect, trust. You didn't just sleep with another man. You let me become a laughingstock at my workplace. You lied to my face every day for months. You put our entire family at risk for a man who's now facing criminal charges. There's no coming back from that. I checked my watch. The kids will be home in an hour. I suggest you be gone by then. Can I at least say goodbye to them? She asked, her voice small. I considered this. Despite everything, she was their mother. You can call them tonight, I said finally. I'll explain that you're staying with a friend for a while. We can tell them the full truth when things have settled. She nodded, defeated. Where will I go? Call a friend. Get a hotel room. Go to Lucas for all I care. Just be gone when I get back. I grabbed my keys and headed for the door, needing to escape the suffocating atmosphere of what had once been my happy home. I did love you, you know, Clara said quietly as I reached for the doorknob. I still do. I turned to look at her one last time. The woman I'd built a life with, the mother of my children, a stranger. No, I said simply. You don't know the meaning of the word. I walked out, closing the door firmly behind me. In my car, I sat for a moment, expecting to feel something, grief perhaps, or regret, but there was only a sense of finality, of a chapter closing. The betrayal had changed me, hardened something inside that would never quite soften again. But I wasn't broken, far from it. I drove to pick up my children from school, arriving early to collect my thoughts. As I waited in the pickup line, I considered the challenges ahead. Single parenthood, divorce proceedings, workplace gossip. None of it would be easy, but I'd face it all with the same methodical determination that had exposed the truth. When Jack Jr. and Amanda bounded into the car, their faces lighting up at the unexpected surprise of Dad picking them up, I felt the first genuine smile in weeks spread across my face. They were my future now, my priority, my purpose. Dad, Amanda exclaimed, buckling her seatbelt, you never pick us up. Things are going to be a bit different from now on, I told them, meeting their eyes in the rearview mirror. But different can be good. Trust me on that. As we drove away from the school, I didn't look back. There was nothing behind me worth seeing anymore. Everything that mattered was right here in this car and in the new life waiting ahead. The following weeks were a blur of activity. Lucas was fired from Precision Insurance once the fraud investigation confirmed my suspicions. Criminal charges were pending. The company gossip machine churned at full speed, but to my surprise, most of my colleagues rallied around me. Dave and Mike in particular went out of their way to be supportive, perhaps to assuage their guilt for not telling me sooner. Clara moved in with her sister temporarily. Our divorce proceedings began with her lawyer making increasingly desperate attempts to secure a favorable settlement. But with the evidence of her affair and Lucas's legal troubles, her position was weak. My attorney was confident we'd get the outcome we wanted: primary custody of the kids, the house, and a fair but not excessive financial settlement. The hardest part was explaining the situation to Jack Jr. and Amanda. I'd enlisted the help of a child psychologist who advised a gentle to appropriate approach that emphasized that both parents still loved them, even if we couldn't live together anymore. But why can't Mom live here? Amanda had asked, her lower lip trembling. Did she do something bad? Mom and I have grown apart, I'd explained carefully. Sometimes adults change and can't be married anymore. But we both love you and Junior very much. That will never change. Jack Jr. at 10 was more perceptive. It's because she was with that man from your office, isn't it? He'd asked one night as I tucked him in. I heard Aunt Lisa talking about it on the phone. I'd been shocked into momentary silence. Junior, that's complicated adult stuff, I'd finally managed. He'd looked at me with eyes far too wise for his age. It's okay, Dad. I won't tell Amanda. She'd just get upset. I'd hugged him tightly, marveling at his resilience and protectiveness toward his sister. You're a good big brother, buddy. And yes, that's part of it. But the important thing is that we're going to be okay. All of us. 1 month after Clara moved out, I received an unexpected visitor at the office. I was deep in a case file when a knock at my door made me look up. Brandon Hudson, Lucas's developer friend and partner in crime, stood in my doorway, looking uncomfortable. Got a minute, Harper? He asked. I gestured to the chair across from my desk, curious despite myself. What can I do for you, Mr. Hudson? He sat down heavily, his usual confidence notably absent. I wanted to apologize, he said without preamble, for my part in all this. The West Side claims, Lucas, everything. I leaned back, studying him. Why come to me? Shouldn't you be apologizing to the company or the prosecutors? I've done that too, he admitted. Turned state's evidence against Lucas. He was the mastermind. I just went along with it. And why should I believe that? Hudson sighed. I don't expect you to. But I want you to know I had no idea about the personal stuff. Your wife, I mean. That was all Lucas. He has a history of this kind of thing. His divorce wasn't because his ex was crazy, like he told everyone. It was because he was sleeping with half the women in her social circle. I absorbed this information, unsurprised but still disgusted. Why are you telling me this? Because I heard he's been trying to contact your wife again, Hudson said bluntly. claiming he was set up, that you framed him, that they can still be together once this misunderstanding is cleared up. My blood ran cold. And you know this, how? He called me, tried to get me to change my testimony, said he had a plan to get back on top, mentioned your wife was part of it. Hudson shifted uncomfortably. Look, I'm not a good guy. I've done things I'm not proud of, but even I have lines I won't cross. Destroying a family? That's beyond the pale. I nodded, processing this unexpected warning. Thank you for the information. After Hudson left, I sat in silence for several minutes, then picked up the phone and called my attorney. If Lucas was trying to manipulate Clara, we needed to document it. It could only strengthen our case. That evening, as I drove home, I received a text from an unknown number. We need to talk. About Lucas, please. Clara, I hesitated, then responded, tomorrow. 1 p.m., the coffee shop on Westheimer, public place only. Her reply was immediate. Thank you. The next day, I arrived at the coffee shop 15 minutes early, securing a table with a clear view of the entrance. Clara arrived precisely at 1, looking thinner than I remembered, with dark circles under her eyes. She'd made an effort with her appearance, but the strain of the past months showed. Thank you for meeting me, she said as she sat down, clutching her purse tightly. What's this about? I asked, keeping my tone neutral. She took a deep breath. Lucas has been calling me, texting, showing up at Lisa's house. He says you set him up, that none of the fraud allegations are true, that once he clears his name, we can be together. And you believe him? No, she said, surprising me. Not anymore. At first, maybe I wanted to, but then he started getting erratic, demanding money for his legal defense, suggesting I could help him by testifying against you somehow. I leaned back, studying her face. And why are you telling me this? Because I'm scared, she admitted. Not just for me, but for the kids. He knows where Lisa lives. He's been drinking, talking crazy. Last night he showed up at 2 a.m., pounding on the door. Lisa's husband had to threaten to call the police. Have you filed a restraining order? She nodded. This morning, but I wanted you to know, to be careful. He blames you for everything. I appreciate the warning, I said carefully. Clara hesitated, then reached into her purse and pulled out a flash drive. There's more. After I moved out, he contacted me, wanted to comfort me. He was recording our conversations, planning to use them somehow against you in court. She pushed the drive across the table. It's all on here, like every call, every text, things he said about the fraud, about how he was going to fix it. I think it might help with your case. I stared at the flash drive, then back at Clara. Why would you give me this? Because I was wrong, she said simply, tears welling in her eyes, about everything. Lucas, us, what I thought I wanted. I destroyed our family for a man who never cared about me at all, who was just using me to get at company information. Who? She swallowed hard. Who laughed about it with his friends, called me his inside source at Harper's house. The raw pain in her voice was impossible to miss, but I felt strangely detached from it. Her suffering no longer affected me the way it once would have. I'm sorry for what he did to you, I said finally, but that doesn't change what you did to us. I know, she whispered. I don't expect forgiveness, Jack. I don't even deserve it. I want to do one right thing, to help make sure he can't hurt anyone else the way he hurt us. I picked up the flash drive, turning it over in my fingers. I'll pass this to my attorney and the prosecutor handling Lucas's case. Thank you. Clara hesitated, then added, how are the kids? They're adjusting, I replied. Junior's been helping Amanda with her homework. She misses you, but she's resilient. And you? She asked softly. How are you doing? The question caught me off guard. How was I doing? I hadn't really stopped to consider it. I'm rebuilding, I said finally. One day at a time. Clara nodded, tears spilling onto her cheeks. I really am sorry, Jack. For everything. I know, I said, and was surprised to realize I meant it. Her remorse seemed genuine. It didn't change anything, but I could acknowledge it. Take care of yourself, Clara. For the kids' sake, if nothing else. As she left, I didn't feel the anger that had sustained me for months. Just a quiet sadness for what might have been, and a growing certainty that whatever came next, I would face it on my terms. The flash drive Clara provided proved invaluable. It contained damning evidence against Lucas, including explicit admissions about the fraud scheme and his plans to manipulate Clara against me. The prosecutor was ecstatic, and my divorce attorney was confident we'd secure the best possible outcome for me and the kids. 3 months after that coffee shop meeting, Lucas Rivers pled guilty to multiple fraud charges in exchange for a reduced sentence. Claire and I finalized our divorce with minimal drama, with me receiving primary custody of the children in the family home. She would have supervised visitation rights, gradually increasing as she demonstrated stability and reliability. The night after the divorce was finalized, I sat on the back porch of what was now solely my house, watching Jack Jr. and Amanda play in the yard. My phone buzzed with a text from Richard Sloan. "Board approved your promotion to Director of Investigations." "Congratulations," I smiled, feeling a weight lift from my shoulders. The journey had been painful, the revelations devastating, but I'd survived, more than survived. I'd emerged stronger, more aware, more determined to build the life my children deserved. "Dad," Amanda called, racing toward me with her hand cupped around something. "Look what I found." She opened her palm to reveal a tiny green frog, no bigger than a quarter. "He was hiding under the swing," she explained excitedly. "Can we keep him?" Jack Jr. rolled his eyes but couldn't hide his own interest in the tiny amphibian. "We should probably let him go," I said gently. "He has his own family to get back to." Amanda considered this, then nodded solemnly. "Okay, but can we make him a little house first, in case he wants to visit?" "I think that's a great idea," I replied, pulling her into a one-armed hug. As the kids busied themselves creating a miniature frog habitat near the garden, I leaned back in my chair and looked up at the evening sky. The future wasn't what I'd planned, but it was mine to shape. Mine and my children's. And for the first time in months, that felt not just acceptable, but full of possibility.